In order for a society to not only exist, but to thrive, there has to be agreement between all the members of that society on how they're going to behave. This is called a social contract. Everyone in that society agrees that there are certain behaviors that are acceptable and some that are not acceptable in a lawful society. As a result of the social contract, we put in place items referred to as social controls to ensure the contract is understood by everyone and, if necessary, to hold people accountable for any criminal behavior. We have many social controls that influence our behavior. Private social controls are usually the first step in teaching what behaviors are good and what behaviors are not so good. Some of these include family, friends, and the clergy. Public social controls primarily enforce the social contract, also known as the law. Some of these include schools, law enforcement, courts, and corrections. However, when some of these social controls fail to do what they were designed to do, society starts to crumble. And some of the indicators of this are mass lawlessness, and as a result, citizens stepping in to fill the vacuum left by the loss of social controls. In this episode of Office of the Patriot, I'm going to uncover the breakdown and the lack of faith the citizens have with public social controls and the mechanisms they're using to get back some semblance of a lawful society. Hello, and welcome to the Office of the Patriot. In this office, I try to make sense out of the nonsense of the progressive left. If you are a subscriber, thank you for your continued viewership. It is appreciated. If you are a returning viewer, please take a moment to hit the subscribe button so you don't miss any future presentations. And if you are a first-time visitor of my channel, well, congratulations on finding it. It's usually hidden by the YouTube algorithm. However, I hope you find the content worth coming back for. My name is Myron Ybarra, and I'm your host. In episode 9 of the Office of the Patriot, Crime and Punishment, I discussed the repercussions of criminal behavior and our government's abdication of the responsibility to hold criminals accountable. As a result, a vacuum has formed in our country, and the problem here is vacuums are quickly filled, most times in haste, and with questionable outcomes. So what do I mean? Well, the first consequence of a society without public social control is lawlessness. With every instance criminals are successful in their criminality, it leads to more brazen behavior and ultimately more dangerous consequences. I'm sure many of us have seen or heard about the random shoplifter or maybe even a snatch and grab crime where a person runs into a store, grabs an item, and then runs out. Given that many prosecutors in large metropolitan cities are letting their political ideology influence their discretion in the application of the law, many, and I mean many, of these criminals are not being held accountable. As a result, there's a growing trend of cooperation among thieves to now attack en masse. And I refer to this as the first phase of the loss of social controls in a community. As an example, in Glendale, California, a group of thieves vandalized and burglarized an Yves Saint Laurent store, stealing over $100,000 worth of merchandise. It didn't appear there was any security on site, and the only reaction from customers and employees was to film the crime while in progress. At the onset of the loss of social controls, people usually get desensitized by the constant criminality, and as a result, indifferent to the victims they are seeing all around them. Again, in California of all places, a mob of thugs vandalized and robbed a Nordstrom's department store inside the Topanga Mall. News reports indicated that some of the security personnel had been sprayed in the face with what appeared to be bear repellent spray by mob members. Again, huge losses suffered by Nordstrom's and almost no intervention. And let's not forget the summer of love in 2020, where rioting and looting and assaulting law enforcement were given the green light by progressive liberals in the media who sensationalized the arrest and death of George Floyd, the BLM movement, and Antifa. This is the second phase of no social controls. And this usually results in retail deserts and urban blight, also referred to as the broken windows theory. Americans in primarily Democrat-run cities are seeing businesses close up shop, even in areas that were once considered safe. This is because when everything is said and done, all of the woke flag waving and virtue signaling by these businesses and the left means nothing if they can't engage in business safely. And who suffers? It's the people in these communities. No social control ultimately leads to an increase in crime as a result of the previously mentioned vacuum that was created when the social controls were vacated. Well, vacuum is space that is devoid of any matter. And when you introduce matter into a vacuum, it usually flows in chaotically. This is what we're seeing happen now with more and more citizens who are tired of being victims intervening when crime is in progress. And I call this the third phase of no social controls. This happens because citizens ultimately want to feel safe in their communities. And if the current social controls have broken down, law-abiding community members believe they are the only ones that can fill the void. The problem here is lawlessness begets lawlessness, even in the circumstance of defense. Consider, how would you feel if someone walked up to you and slapped you in your face? Your immediate instinct would likely be to respond in kind. And if everyone has to behave that way because there's no accountability for the perpetrator by social controls, a civil society will eventually come crashing down. Now, while I don't condone citizens taking justice into their own hands, I do understand their frustration and the need to do so. And a little part of me celebrates their victory. Oh, okay, maybe a large part of me. In this instance of fuck around and find out, also known as FAFO, you have your atypical cracked out thief who decides that his pockets aren't big enough to carry his stolen items, so he decides to wheel in a garbage can and start stealing from this convenience store in Stockton, California. However, he did not expect a couple of the employees to not only prevent him from taking anything, but also provide what criminologists refer to as specific deterrence in the form of corporal punishment. In street parlance, it's an FAFO ass whooping that most people agree he had coming. Now, some of you may think that I cherry-picked these incidents, and I can assure you that I did not. There are thousands of them that have occurred within the last decade that made it easy to select examples, much like trying to decide what to eat at the Bellagio Sunday brunch. All of these incidents are increasing in frequency and intensity. Now, I understand that most people are in a bind right now, a crappy economy, Bidenomics. Overpriced gas and utilities, ridiculous rents, and mortgage rates may have you stuck in one of these cities and fearful for your life as a result of the condoned lawlessness by your state, county, or city leaders. Now, I can't advise you of what to do to address this lawlessness. However, I can tell you what I would do. I would get the hell out. Because I mean nothing is worth the lives of your loved ones and yourself. However, if you have to stay for whatever reason, I recommend that you keep some mechanism of defense with you at all times. Be wary of your surroundings, and if the shit does hit the fan, fight like your life depends on it, because it does. This concludes today's presentation of Office of the Patriot. If you enjoyed the content, please take the time to like, subscribe, and share my channel on your social media. It is appreciated. And as always, have a blessed day and stay safe out there.